Hi, everybody, and welcome to Echo Live. My name is Anna, and of course, I am coming to you from the Michigan Science Center's Echo Distance Learning Program. Today on Echo Live, we are celebrating World Environment Day. This is a very special holiday or event in science communities all around the world because we are celebrating our world environment. We talked about this a little bit yesterday on Echo Live about how important the Earth is to us, right? Out of all of the billions of stars and our endless universe, right, there is only one planet Earth, only one planet that human beings truly get to call home. And so it's important that as citizens of planet Earth, we all work together in order to keep our planet healthy, safe, and sustainable. So we are going to talk about one thing that is important for us to consider as we are good stewards of our very own planet Earth. So today we're going to start talking about some waste. So we are going to talk about the different types of waste we might create in our own homes and talk about what happens to those different objects once we are done using them. So what I'd like to do today is play a game. I have 3 bins here on the table. I've got a bin for trash. I'm sure we're all familiar with trash. I'm sure we all take out the trash at home, especially if we're very, very helpful. We might even help to take the trash out to the dumpster or to our curbside bin. We can also talk about recyclable materials. So materials that we can either put in our curbside recycling or take to our local recycling center so that those objects can be reprocessed and repurposed into new objects and new materials. But then I also have a bin that for now I'm calling other, because as we go through this game, we might not be able to fit some of these items into our trash or our recycling bin. And so for now, we're going to designate those other materials towards this other bin. So tell me in your home, is there any sort of waste that you've already created today? This is a great way for us to practice using the chat feature of whichever program you are tuning in on. If you are watching in YouTube, Facebook, or Zoom, tell me some sort of waste that you've created today. I'll give you an example. This morning, I had eggs for breakfast, and I used the last egg in the container, and so I was left with the styrofoam packing material that my eggs came in from the store. And so that is an example of something that is now considered waste, right? So I don't have another use for it. It needs to go somewhere. And we'll actually play our game using that object. So tell me an example of what is something that you've either had to throw in the trash, into your recycling bin, or something that you've done otherwise with your waste that you've created at home. What is an example? Let's see what you guys have thought of so far. Ooh, Taylor has maybe had pizza for lunch or even for breakfast. I'm not judging. Pizza's delicious for all meals of every day. So Taylor has a pizza box. And so maybe we're not quite sure yet what to do with that pizza box. Awesome. So you created potty waste. Interesting. That is still waste, right? Something that we're no longer using. So it had to go somewhere. Hopefully you disposed of that appropriately. Plastic bottles from Ruth. Helena has an empty milk carton that they're no longer using. All right, good answers, everybody. So we are pretty familiar or pretty aware. Kennedy in YouTube has a wrapper, maybe from some sort of food or maybe even candy. Ooh, I love candy. So I know that candy wrappers are certainly one kind of waste that I generate on most days. I do love candy. So we're pretty aware, at least, of the different types of waste that we are creating. And we create, as humans, lots of waste. We send plenty of things to landfills in the trash, into recycling centers, and then we do other things with our waste as well. So it's good that we're aware. Now, I have some examples of waste that I'd like for you to tell me in the chat. So I'll show you an object, and then I want you to tell me in the chat which of our 3 sorting bins does this object belong in. So should it go in the trash? Should it go in the recycling, or should it go somewhere else? So let's start with the first type of materials that I have here. So I've got some aluminum. I've got some aluminum. I've got a aluminum can from a drink that I had. And I also have one of these aluminum pie tins. So it's a little bit, you can tell I can't really use it anymore. It's got a hole in the bottom. And so tell me what you think. Which bin does aluminum belong in? Tell me when you have a guess. Where does aluminum belong? Is it trash, recycling, or something else? Tell me what you think. keep an eye on our chat in all of our programs here. All right, a few people telling me that aluminum is a recyclable material. You're absolutely right. Aluminum is actually one of the most valuable types of recyclable materials that we commonly put in the recycling bin. So both our can and our aluminum pie tin can go right there inside our recycling bin. Those types of materials, if you have curbside recycling, if there's a big truck that comes and picks up your recycling, these are great things to put in that bin. These are the types of things they're looking for because these are easy to recycle, and it's actually much, much easier to make a new aluminum can out of old aluminum cans than it is to start from scratch. All right, let's take a look at our next item here. I have some plastic. So I've got a couple different kinds of plastic here. I've got this one is like a plastic container or packaging that I had a battery charger come in. So I've got some packaging plastic. I have a plastic spoon and a plastic lid. So I'm missing the bottom part from this microwavable container. And so I can't really use this anymore. It's not good for much. What can I do with these items? Trash, recycle, or other? Trash, recycle, or other? Tell me what you think. Good answers starting to come in. People are passionate that these items can, of course, be recycled. Plastic is another one of those highly valuable materials that we can put in our recycling bins. They're really easy to be recycled and turned back into new plastics for us, back into circulation, things for us to use. Now, the spoon brings us to an interesting question, though, because even though plastic is recyclable, this plastic spoon and most plastic utensils are made out of recyclable plastic. It is one of those types of recyclable plastics. Not all curbside recycling will take plastic utensils like forks and spoons and knives or even plastic plates. It has to do with the weight of these objects. So because sometimes they are not quite heavy enough to be sorted correctly by the large machines, some curbside recycling programs will not accept plastic utensils. Mine does, and so I'm going to go ahead and stick it there inside the bin. But this brings us to an interesting point that you may need to do some education on your own or some research on your own about what types of things you can put in your curbside recycling bin if you do have it. Not every city has curbside recycling. It is a major luxury, I will say, that it is really nice to have if you have curbside recycling where you can just throw all of your recyclables in one bin and then a factory will actually sort them for you. But there are downsides to that because not all things can be sorted very easily by the machines. And we'll talk more about that as we move through our game here. So we've got some good recyclable materials in there. I'm glad to know that you guys are aware these materials are recyclable, that they don't belong in the trash can because they'll end up in a landfill, but we can actually recycle these objects. All right, next objects. Someone told me that they had a wrapper. And so I've got some, these are not necessarily candy wrappers, but these are made out of some similar materials that a candy wrapper or a chip bag might be made out of. So this is an empty bag from crispy fried onions, one of my favorite snacks, and an empty drink pouch here. So we've got two types of wrappers or food wrappers or containers. What do you think about these? Can they go in the trash, the recycling, or the other pile? Tell me what you think. What about these objects that I have? It's a little trickier. So think about these things, think about them. Where would you put these? If you had these in your own home, which bin would they end up in? Yeah, these items are considered trash. They're really not recyclable. We really can't do anything with the materials that these objects are made out of. And so we really don't have any choice other than to put them in the trash. They're lined with a metal film. And so they're kind of a mix of plastic and metal and a whole other slew of materials here. There's some printing on these and the ink, which makes these items non-recyclable. Now there is a plastic straw from this drinking pouch, which is another one of those items that is not necessarily recyclable in curbside bins, not even at mine. So this can't go in a curbside recycling bin, But if you take your recycling to a recycling center, this is something that you could sort. So you could sort it into a pile of plastics that doesn't go into this recycling bin. But unfortunately, according to this game and the rules that we're playing by today, this would have to go in the trash because this is too light to be recycled, and it could actually cause damage to some of those recycling sorting machines. So trash for that one. All right, next I have wood. So I've got some wooden coffee stirrers, and I also have a colored pencil. Now, what do you think? Trash, recycling, or other use? Trash, recycle, or other for wood. So I have wooden coffee stirrers and a colored pencil here. What do you think? Keep an eye on the chat. Take a moment to think, right? Think about what these are made out of. Now, wood is an organic material, right? Wood comes from trees. So we definitely don't want to make too much stuff out of wood, right? Because trees, even though they are a renewable resource, they take a really long time in order to grow large enough for us to be able to chop them down and make things out of wood. Yeah, lots of people telling me other. So everyone is pretty confident that we don't need to throw wood in the trash, but that it also does not belong in the recycling bin. So wood is not recyclable. It's not material that we can shred up, melt down, and reuse in the ways that we use with other types of recycling, but we can do something else with these. What can we do with these besides throw them in the trash or recycle them? So if you said other and you have an idea about what I might do with these materials, what is that? What could I do with this besides throw it in the trash or toss it in the recycling bin? Because both of those aren't great options. One that maybe is something some people do at home. It's not very common, but I can actually compost wood. So composting is a way of biodegrading materials that normally come from the earth. We can actually turn them back into earth themselves. It takes a little while. We'll actually talk about that process here on Echo today too. But wood is compostable. Now, I'm not actually going to compost my colored pencil here. It still has its use, but fun fact is that your pencil shavings, so when you go to sharpen your pencils like this one, that makes for great composting material. Wood is really great for that. I'm not actually going to compost my colored pencil because it's still perfectly good to use. And so, of course, before we want to get rid of something, right, we want to use it for its entire usefulness. We don't want to throw things away or get rid of them before their usefulness, because then otherwise we're just going to have to buy new ones. So I won't do that. All right, next item. We have plastics, more plastics, right? So I've got plastic bag and some plastic packaging material. So this one is like a bubble wrap envelope I got from a popular delivery service. This is a poly, well, I'm gonna forget the word. It's not polystyrene. You know what this is called. I'll think of it in a moment. It'll come back to me. But this is like foam, like shipping foam that might protect some of your electronics if they are shipped to you. So what do you think about these items? Plastic packaging. Is this recyclable like our other plastics? Can we throw it in the trash? Can we compost it? What do you think? Recycle? A couple of people saying recycle or other. All right, so there are some interesting answers about this. Now, let's start with this bubble wrap package. So this bubble wrap package, maybe you've gotten one of these in the mail. I actually turned it inside out, so you can't see some of those symbols that come on this packaging, but there is a very deceiving symbol on this package. There is a blue recycling symbol. So I have a picture of a recycling symbol that I can show you. As we talk about the 3 R's, right? We should always reduce, reuse, and recycle. So reduce our use of certain items, reuse things when we can, and then recycle those items once we're done with them. But this package was mailed to me with a blue recycling symbol. However, bubble wrap is not recyclable. It cannot be recycled. So what's deceiving and what I think is interesting for people to know is that sometimes you really have to look closely at packaging. Even though something might say it's recyclable, that doesn't make it true. So I actually have a big issue with them using this blue recycling symbol because inside the recycling symbol, it says store drop off. So what they mean is not that this is recyclable. It doesn't mean we should put it in the recycling bin. What they mean is that it can be reused by the store. So you can take envelopes like this back to shipping stores, back to places like your post office, and they will repurpose and reuse these, but they are not recyclable in your curbside bin. So do not throw these in your recycling bin. They cannot go in there, but you can take them back. And so we'll put that in the other pile. So if you're willing to take them back to your local post office or delivery service, those items, absolutely, we can call that an other over here in this bin. This plastic foam may also apply to that same program. They might take things back. I know certain stores will take back things like packing peanuts. Let's see, Helena says that bubble wrap is fun. And that is 100% true. Bubble wrap is super fun. I don't know if you pop all of those plastic bubbles, I don't know that they'll be able to reuse that packaging, which would then make that packaging trash. So it actually can't be recycled, couldn't be reused. And so just make sure that if you do that, that is an item that would have to end up in the trash. This is another one of those cases. Now, I'm not sure, I've never heard of this specific type of polyurethane foam. Thank you, Jasmine, for helping me out with that one. Polyurethane foam is not recyclable. And I don't know that it's often accepted by carriers. If it is, it could go in the other bin. Not quite sure, but otherwise, I'm gonna rip it in half because we can distribute. Possible that maybe some packaging services will take it back, but unlikely. And so this type of material is going to end up in the trash. Now, plastic bags are another interesting case. Plastic bags can be recycled, but are again, one of those things that absolutely cannot go in your curbside recycling bin. Plastic like this, that's really thin, can really easily get caught in those big machines that sort and shred up our plastic materials. What happens is that these plastic bags can actually get jammed up inside those gears. Then the whole plant has to stop. They have to turn off the machines, and then it is a person's job to then reach into that machine, pull out these plastic bags by hand. It's not cost effective for recycling plants to have to shut down every time one of these plastic bags makes it into the recycling system. So definitely never put these in your curbside recycling bin. I know that my local grocery stores have a big bin right when you walk back in the building where you can actually drop these bags back off. So if they come in their own separate recycling pile, already sorted to be in a pile of plastic bags, these can be recycled, but do not put them in your recycling bin. So we'll put that in the other pile because you should, of course, either reuse your plastic shopping bags if you do choose to use them, or you can choose not to take them at all. Choose something like a paper bag or a reusable, stylish bag. But otherwise, you should take them back to the store so that they can be recycled properly. All right, got a couple more things here. This one I thought was kind of fun. How about clothing? How about things like your ripped up pants, maybe dirty, maybe have holes in them. What can you do with things like fabric? What do you think about fabric? What should we do with that? Can it go in the recycling bin? Should we put it in the trash, or can we think of another use for our denim? A couple people saying trash or other. Trash or other is a good answer, right? So we're pretty familiar with jean or denim can't be recycled. It's not, again, one of those materials that we could shred up, melt down, and repurpose back into other uses of denim. But it is made of organic material. So things like cotton or denim are made from fibers of plants. And so we can't necessarily recycle them. We could, of course, reuse them. You could chop up this fabric for other uses. But normally this type of stuff ends up in the trash. So it can go in the trash, but it can also go in our other piles. Since these are made of natural materials, fabrics can be composted. Now, composting is tricky. And so you can't necessarily throw your big pair of jeans into the compost bucket and hope that they'll just break down on their own. We're gonna have to shred this up into much smaller pieces so that that process happens more quickly. But we'll go ahead and we'll drop that down in our composting or other bin off to the side, because that's something that we don't necessarily need to throw out in the trash. All right, couple more things. I swear we're almost done here. All right, I've got cardboard. Cardboard next. What do we think about cardboard? So I've got just a shipping box here, something that was mailed to my house in a small little corrugated cardboard box. And of course, the cardboard that came off of my frozen waffles, one of my favorite foods. So cardboard, what do we think about this? Trash, recycle, or other? Trash, recycle, or other? What do we think? I'm sure this is something that we've all created waste of at home. I know that especially lately, people are doing a lot more online shopping. So maybe you're getting more packages delivered to your house in boxes like this one. I know that lots of different foods come in cardboard containers. Yeah, lots of people telling us that they recycle these materials. Cardboard is absolutely recyclable. You can absolutely recycle these kinds of things, but we can also put it in our compost pile. Cardboard, corrugated cardboard, is a great compostable material. So we'll put the corrugated cardboard in our other pile. So the corrugated cardboard ends up over there. Whereas, what about the waffles? Now, because this has ink and it's kind of a processed material, this is not great for composting. So because it's wrapped with this kind of layer of printing paper and it's not just strictly cardboard, this one can go in the recycling bin. That one can actually be shredded up and repurposed, but cannot go in our compost bin. Now I have another piece of cardboard here. What about this pizza box? So Taylor said that she had a pizza box, maybe just like this one, maybe even this exact kind of pizza box. What do you do with your pizza boxes, Taylor, if you're still there, or anyone else? What should Taylor do with her pizza box that she has laying around from her maybe pizza breakfast or maybe more likely pizza lunch today? What do you think about the pizza box? Can it go in the recycling bin? Should we put it in the trash? Compost? What do you think? Now this one is a little bit trickier because we said that this corrugated cardboard, you're not a composting family, if you haven't yet started composting your trash, that we said we could put corrugated cardboard in the recycling bin. And this is made out of that exact same material. This is corrugated cardboard, but this is not recyclable. Pizza boxes, once they've been used, are not recyclable. And if you are not going to compost your trash, this has to go in the trash. Recycling can be tainted if it has food in it. So food waste or grease especially makes recycling items non-acceptable. So they can actually taint an entire load of recycling. So if you have been throwing your pizza boxes in your curbside recycling bin, please stop. They cannot be recycled because even if you see on the bottom here, that grease that's on this box makes it non-recyclable. You cannot put pizza boxes in the recycling bin. They can be composted because the grease is not going to actually harm anything for your compost. It'll actually help, but this pizza box, unless you're a composting family, does have to go in the trash over here. All right. Now, very lastly, I have kind of a fun demo for us to try. So I want to talk about one last thing. So we talked about one of the types of waste that I created today was my egg carton. And this egg carton is made out of polystyrene. Polystyrene we find in things like coffee cups like this one or egg cartons. We find it all over the place. We said that we also make packing peanuts out of it as well. But polystyrene can't be accepted in your curbside recycling bin either. Part of it is actually, it's not because it's non-recyclable. We can recycle it, but it's not cost effective and it takes up a lot of space at recycling plants or in those big trucks. And so don't put it in your curbside recycling bin. I know that my local curbside recycling does not accept polystyrene. And so I have an alternative for you, kind of something fun. So inside this shallow little dish, which is recyclable, this is a lunch meat container, and I'm actually not going to recycle it because I reuse them. My family at home reuses them. But instead, what I'm going to do is I can actually dissolve this polystyrene into acetone. And so I've got a shallow bit of acetone there. I'm just going to go ahead and place some of our polystyrene items down inside the liquid. Now you'll notice, especially with my polystyrene cup, it's starting to kind of sink down. Let's see if we can get a better up close view if I maybe zoom in just a little bit here on the table. Now our polystyrene is dissolving. Now polystyrene is a polymer. We've talked about polymers a lot here on Echo Live. There are all sorts of polymers that we use for different purposes, but this is a chain of styrene molecules that are full of air. So we actually inject this through a nozzle, fill it with air, And then it gives us this really, really large amount of polystyrene foam. This is good, right? There are benefits to polystyrene because we can take a very, very small, almost tiny amount of material and turn it into something very large, like a cup or packing materials, things like that. But they take up a lot of space in landfills. Because they take up so much space, right, that can be horrible for the environment. And this does not biodegrade on its own. So we can actually shrink it down here inside the acetone. You can see that now both of our items have kind of almost fully dissolved, and we'll let those sink back down there because acetone will actually dissolve those styrene molecules, release the air, and now they don't take up very much space, which is actually a very similar process to what happens if you take your polystyrene to the recycling center. They'll actually condense it back down into styrene liquid. And so this polystyrene or the styrene liquid can actually be used as adhesives, but we should absolutely not burn it with fire. So we don't want to burn any sort of plastic, and styrene is a type of plastic. So we absolutely don't want to do that because the gas that's trapped inside is carbon dioxide. And we know, right, we absolutely know that carbon dioxide gas being released into our atmosphere is also one of those major problems of populations here on Earth, of our world environment, right? So we definitely don't want to burn it. Take it to your recycling center so that they can dispose of it appropriately. It shouldn't go in the trash, right? Because it takes up a ton of space in our landfills, but it also isn't accepted by our local recycling programs like mine. And so take it to your recycling center. We don't want to generate waste in our trash that doesn't have to be there. All right. Now I've got one last thing for us to try before we head out today. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, make sure that you type them in the chat. I'm keeping an eye on those. I'd love to answer them towards the end of our program. But the last thing I'd like to talk about is how you can actually start your very own composting program at home. So let's talk about composting a little. Now, when we think about compostable materials, you know, often you hear about things like compostable cleaning wipes, or there's these new kinds of plastic cups, which are made out of compostable plastics, just like things like this compostable plastic bag. Now, because these say they are compostable, the problem becomes people think we can throw these things in the trash because they're compostable. They'll break down over time, right? But that it could not be farther from the truth. Those items will not break down in a landfill. Nothing breaks down in a landfill. Nothing biodegrades because the environment is not right for it. In order for something to biodegrade or to truly be compostable, it needs to be in an environment that is constantly moving and allowing the movement of air and microorganisms that allow composting to actually happen. When we bury our trash in a landfill, we actually seal it inside because we don't want to let the trash seep out of the landfill into our groundwater or into our environment. So we seal all the trash there, which doesn't allow air or microorganisms to help in that process of biodegradability. So there's all sorts of things that come into play. Things that say compostable, right? We have to think about what kind of material is it, right? Is it biodegradable or non-biodegradable? Even if it's biodegradable, is it thin or is it really thick? Because obviously thin items like those plastic bags will compost faster than thick items if we do put them in a proper compost pile. But they also need appropriate disposal conditions. They need to be in places where the temperature, the moisture, the air intake, and the organisms and the light are all there appropriately, helping this process of composting to happen. If we're in unfavorable conditions, right, like underwater, say some of our trash ends up in the ocean, or even our compostable materials, if they end up in the ocean, not enough light or air actually gets inside those, and it's far too cold for that process of composting to actually take place. So we can easily compost at home. Even if you're only working with a small amount of space, you can make a very simple composting bin out of something like this 5-gallon bucket. So a 5-gallon bucket is extremely inexpensive. This one cost me about $4 with the lid. And it's important that your compost bin will have a lid on it because as this process of composting happens, your compost bin is going to get really, really stinky. And so you'll want to put this in an outdoor place. If you can't put it in an outdoor place, you'll definitely want to find a bin within a bin. So you could use a smaller bucket inside a bigger bucket for this, or you could use a storage tub, something like that. But for this one, since I'll be keeping mine outside, I used a 5-gallon bucket. And what I did before the program is I actually drilled holes in it. So you can see, let me see if I can give you a zoomed in look. Go ahead. You can see that I drilled about 12 holes in the top of my bucket, 12 holes in the bottom of my bucket, and then I went all the way around the bucket and I drilled about 15 to 20 more holes all the way around the outside of my bucket here, right? That is so that we can let air and moisture and even microorganisms into our composting bin. Those are the conditions we actually need in order for composting to work. And you guys all seem like you might be composters at home, but if you are not a composter at home or you want to start your composting journey, this is a really easy way to do so. The first thing we're going to add into our composting bin is some sticks. So adding sticks to the very bottom of your bin is going to prevent those drainage holes that I drilled in the outside to not get blocked. So they won't get plugged with our composting materials. We want to allow the flow of moisture and the flow of air in and out of our bucket. So go ahead, break them, kind of just place them all across the bottom here. And so that should always be your first layer of your compost bucket. All right, now that we've got those shoved down in the bottom there, this is the point where you would start adding your compost materials to your bucket. I've been collecting mine for the past few days, and I've been keeping them in my kitchen in a little airtight container. So I've been keeping this in my kitchen next to the trash to save some things that might normally end up in the trash. In the bottom, you can see that I am a coffee drinker, and so I've been saving my coffee grounds, but there's also all sorts of other materials like lettuce and an apple core and a pizza crust here. So not the cheese or the meat that came on the pizza, but just the crust itself. And all of this stuff can be composted. So you want to add your compost materials, things like your food scraps, in with a mixture of other materials that are normally things like yard waste. So I also have some wood chips and dirt and some other fallen leaves and things like that. And so you'll just basically want to throw all that stuff into your compost bin, and you'll just keep adding it as you collect it. So you can do this maybe every few days. Once you fill a container about this size, you come out, you add it to your composting bin. You can also add in a little bit of potting soil if you have some. It's not necessary to actually use it, but it is helpful. It's one of those things that has lots of nutrients in it, which is going to help with this composting process. And then all you're going to do is seal your lid and roll your bin around. Now your compost does need to be moist as well. So you can either water your compost through the holes in the top of the bucket every few days to make sure that it's staying wet. But the most important thing you're gonna have to do is to agitate those materials, is actually shake them around. Not the greatest idea to do inside. I am gonna clean my studio here, right? But since your compost bin will likely either be kept outside or in a bin within another bin, when you shake it up, right, you are that person that is aiding this process of compost. This takes a really long time. And so it's going to take about 5 to 7 weeks once your bin is full of compost materials for this to turn into fertilizer. But once you have that fertilizer, you can add it to your garden. You can use it to fertilize your flowers and your trees and your plants. And they're going to grow very, very healthy for something that was free, right? This is things you were otherwise going to throw away, or things that you found outside that were waste in your yard. So this is something really easy that you can do to help the environment. This is something that you can do to be a good steward of planet Earth, is to start composting. It's inexpensive, and the materials that go inside are things that you were going to throw in the trash anyway. So once you start this, you'll actually notice just how much lighter your trash bags get every week too. So you'll notice that as you throw less food waste in the trash, and more of it goes in your compost, that we're actually saving space in the landfill for those things that would otherwise sit in the landfill for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. Ruth asked a good question. We didn't talk about plastic bottles, and I do have one here, but our game was taking a little long. So I have a plastic bottle here, and that is a great question, is what do we do with a plastic bottle? These are absolutely recyclable. However, there's a big problem with plastic bottles, especially ones like this, is that The bottle itself and the lid are made out of two different kinds of plastic. So while my curbside recycling program doesn't require that we actually separate them, some of them do. So what's a good practice to get into is that when you are going to throw a plastic bottle, if you do choose to use them in the trash, that you actually take off both the lid and the little plastic ring that went around the outside of the bottle and throw these into your recycling bin separately. So those can go in the recycling now. Since we've separated the two types of plastic, we can actually recycle those materials, but it saves your recycling center a lot of work and the risk that it might contaminate a recycling bin if you just separate those two things themselves. All right. Let's see, if anyone has any other questions, go ahead and type them in the chat. I did see a comment come through about my t-shirt. This is a t-shirt for our STEMinista project. Our STEMinista project is an initiative for 4th through 8th grade girls, especially 4th through 8th grade girls here in the city of Detroit, that we want to get engaged and stay on a path of engagement in STEM. Around that time, 4th through 8th grade girls, their interest in STEM really drops off, especially students that are within our direct community here in Detroit. We want to support you. If you are in need of support, reach out to the STEMinista project, reach out to us here on Facebook. We are standing with our community during this time. We want to be a resource for you. Everyone here in the city of Detroit has to do their part in order for everybody to feel included, especially those in our Black community here in Detroit. We honor you and we are here to serve you. It is something that I am personally very, very passionate about. I am angered by recent events. But the STEMinista project is a great way to start your journey. If you are not educated on it, I highly encourage you to listen to the Black voices in our community, listen to our staff members working on the STEMinista project, educate yourself and educate your friends as well. So thank you everyone so much. I hope that we'll see you back here on Monday for even more Echo Live. It's been an honor to serve you, everyone who's tuning in from Michigan, from here in Detroit, and from all across the country. Thank you everyone so much, and we hope we'll see you back here on Monday.